Hi, today we're continuing with Chapter 8, which is looking at the functional strategy and strategic choice of functional departments. So, functional strategy, we're looking at more of a departmental level of a business. And we were looking for these functional areas like marketing, accounting, finance to extend the corporate objectives and strategies and help to maximize labor and material and resource productivity to hopefully help the company achieve its strategic goals. So strategic goals, as we saw in previous chapters, are set at a very high level of management, and they can be very high level thoughts or thinking of where they want to take the company. It's the functional areas that actually carry out and perform the tasks that are going to hopefully lead to successful implementation of the strategies and hopefully the success that they're looking to achieve from these strategies. So one really critical area is the marketing strategy. So if you're selling a product, you've got to think about pricing and what's the best price for the product, the way you're going to sell it, the way you're going to distribute it. So these are the things that marketing has to think about. And specifically, they have to come up with a particular marketing strategy. How are they going to, who and how are they going to sell their product? And which market are they going to pick? Which customers? How are they going to penetrate that market? And how is it going to be positioned with its current products? So product development strategy would really be if a company wants to make a new product for existing or new markets, what is the strategy there? So the marketing strategy often helps the company. They get the feedback, the information of what's likely to sell or a product that they should develop. Maybe it's a brand extension. So, many years ago, there were just Oreos. And then the marketing people came up with ideas for a brand extension, double stuff, triple stuff, fudge covered, reverse Oreos, spring Oreos, Hulk Oreos, Halloween Oreos. So those are all considered new products, specifically a brand extension. But there has to be a strategy for developing and moving new products, because in many parts of the world, specifically the United States, there is a keen interest in new products and new restaurants and new locations. So if you look at a new restaurant that may open up in your area, in the beginning, there's a huge demand for the restaurant. For example, in our area, they opened up a cheesecake factory, and when they first opened up the cheesecake factory, there were 2-hour, 3-hour waits on the weekends and hour-long plus waits on the weekdays for many months. Then after about a year goes by and people are not so fascinated with this new restaurant in the area, the wait and the demand dies down, and they run over to the next new restaurant, maybe Malibu Breeze. So people like new. Okay, so let's talk about different strategies. A brand extension is taking a successful name and putting it in another product or market. One of the first brand extensions that really started the craze of extending the brand name was Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola first made a product called Tab, which was their diet soda, and it sold okay, but sales didn't explode until they made Diet Coke. Once they made Diet Coke, extending the Coca-Cola brand name on the soda, people instantly recognized Coca-Cola, and the brand extension sold probably 100 times better than Tab. And then we started the era of all these brand extensions of Coke. Coke, Vanilla Coke, Clear Coke, Cherry Coke, and so on. There are many other different Cokes. Coke Zero, for example. So you get the idea. Now, there are also these push and pull strategies. Now, a push strategy is trying to get the product onto the store shelves. So a push strategy could be offering a retailer, listen, if you buy these 3 products, we'll throw in this 4th product for free. Or if you buy a certain amount of products, you buy 6 of these products, you get a 20% discount. So rather than buying one or two products, buy the whole family, all six, and you'll get a discount. So we're trying to push the product onto shelves where hopefully consumers will see it and purchase it. So the push strategy can include, sometimes they get so aggressive that some companies will offer, give us X amount of shelf space and let us stock it with whatever products we want, and we'll pay you for the shelf space. It's also known as a slotting charge. So when you go into a supermarket and you notice that Coca-Cola has the first position at eye level on the shelf, and they have like about, 30 feet of shelf space, they're paying for that. And they even go as far as bring their own personnel in to stock the shelves for the supermarket. So the supermarket gets extra money by them paying for the shelf, and even saves labor by Coca-Cola coming in and stocking it for the supermarket and fixing it. And that's why, some aisles of the supermarket may look all messy and out of whack and kind of not cared for. But you go into the soda aisle, all the sodas are facing the right way, the labels are all properly facing the cans. Everything's all very organized. It's because Coca-Cola is coming in doing that directly. Now, a pull strategy is think of the customer. You're either pushing the product on the customer by making it available for them to see, or you're creating a demand for them to pull the product. So the customer's actually going to the store and asking for it or buying it. So a pull strategy would be advertising, commercials, coupons. So you're trying to get the customer to go and either ask for the product or buy the product directly. So coupons are a great way, more aggressive advertising, using a spokesperson, something to make the product known and desirable so customers buy it directly. So they don't sort of just wander into the store and discover it, they're actually heading to the store specifically for that product. Okay, so skim pricing, this is sort of when you're skimming, think of skimming like milk doesn't really come this way anymore. But milk used to come in a glass container delivered to your house, and the top of the milk had a very thick cream on it, and people would skim the top of the milk to get their cream. Now that the milk companies send out the milk pre-skimmed, and they sell cream separately. But when we talk to skim pricing, we're looking at the top of the demand curve with high prices while the product is still relatively new and competitors are few. So something like, say, the Oculus Rift virtual reality goggles, they're charging a premium for them because that is sort of, a new product, a novel product, and there isn't many competitors. And anyway, at one point, they're charging quite a bit for those headsets. But as new competitors are entering the space, we'll see those headsets go down to probably around $100 to a level where the average person will be easily able to buy them. But in the beginning, if a product has some novelty to it or uniqueness, and there's not many competitors, they'll try and make a much higher price for it to skim as much of the cream out of the market before the market really starts expanding. Penetration pricing, this is looking to get a foothold, to gain a huge amount of market share with a lower price and sort of dominate the industry. So if you're, say, a company, maybe you're a new cigarette company, and you want to, it's difficult to get attraction or to get people to notice your cigarette in the crowded market, you may want to really lower your price to get into the market. Now, if you're existing cigarette maker like Marlboro, you may see this, and since you're sort of an industry leader, you can also lower your prices to defend your position. So it's a common sense. You want to lower your price to gain more market share, and hopefully by gaining the market share at some point in establishing your product, you can then again raise the price at a later point to make more profits. So it's sort of like, in some cases, if companies do this too aggressively, it could be an unfair trade practice. If they're selling the product at a loss to try to put a competitor out of business. And sometimes you see this with foreign governments may provide support to companies to sell their products at a very low price that will put competing manufacturers out of business, and then they'll raise their price dramatically once the other business is closed. And that would be an abusive use of predatory pricing. Okay, so let's move over to the functional area of finance. This area is sort of a specialty of mine. I often teach finance classes But a company needs a really strong financial strategy to look at, all the different areas where the company is utilizing cash or capital. Capital is just a fancy word for money. And look at the best course of action for their financial strength. So they may managers have many areas of financial strategy. Two particularly important financial strategies for shareholders would be the amount of dividends they're going to pay and how they're managing the stock price. So companies have to make decisions that are going to hopefully improve the performance of the company, which will lead to more dividends with more profits, and also improve the stock price. Now, a leverage buyout, this can happen when a company borrows money, a large amount of debt, to buy a company or an acquisition. So you find a company and the leverage means you're borrowing money to buy that company. Now, a reverse stock split is where, say you have 100 shares and now you have 50 shares. So that was a 2-for-1 reverse stock split. And the only time a company would really do this is if their stock price got too low, because it's generally not a good financial strategy to reverse your stock. Generally, you want to do a regular stock split, and that's more encouraging for investors. Okay. So let's go back to financial strategy for a minute. So for companies, they want to figure out the best way of taking the money or capital that they have and reinvesting it in the company, either buying other companies or expanding the company, or just also managing cash at all the different levels and points of the company. So if there's somewhere where a company can save some money by improving a process or reducing personnel needed or reducing the labor hours to manufacture a product, or outsourcing something somewhere cheaper than we can do in-house, the finance department should be looking at that. And they specifically, a big real areas, finance should be looking at a way of minimizing the cost of money. So refinancing debt, paying off debt, looking at additional ways to raise cash flow, other investments that are going to help to manage capital and create, the lower the cost of capital, the money they pay for various sources of money, and also look for investments that are going to help in the future expand the capital. Okay, so if we look at research and development strategies, just fix this title. Research and development strategies is another important area, because companies need to always think of companies like a shark. And you've seen that show Shark Tank. Sharks have to constantly swim, constantly move to stay alive, because that's how they breathe. They can't really sit still. So companies are sort of the same thing. And one way a company moves forward is to develop new products. And they need to develop new products. They have to have a development strategy and a research strategy, because a lot of new products are dependent on research, especially in some industries like pharmaceuticals and manufacturing. Research is a critical area for innovation. So companies need to think about their products and the process and try to make innovations or improvements in their products to keep moving them forward. That's why cars are always constantly including more features, more safety features, backup cameras, side alerts for turning, just all different things that they are trying to incorporate to make their car seem more progressive, more innovative, newer features that are going to attract investors. Even cell phones. Cell phones are a constant battle of innovation and improved features and style and performance. And they spend a huge amount of money on research for that. Now, the research and development is really about talented people. So if talented people can come up with a good mix of the of people's skills to really research different product potentials and the way to develop them. And there have been many companies who developed a lot of good research, but just weren't able to develop them into companies or into products. And a really good example of that's used a lot is the Palo Alto, I think Xerox Research Center that came up with the mouse and GUI interface for computers, and then did nothing with it until Steve Jobs visited, got the ideas, and basically copied them, and was the first computer to have a mouse and these GUI interfaces, this graphical interfaces that changed the industry and made, the mouse and the GUI interface is now incorporated into all computers and iPads. Well, not iPads don't have a mouse, but the GUI interface is in iPads and all screens. And you can see that also Apple's research development in the first iPhone was revolutionary with their touch screen, and now they have coming out the new iPhone. I think is going to have a touch pressure sensor screen, the gyro, compass, and all these different abilities inside of the iPhone, and even the new iWatch now is what they need to help create new products and expand the company. So research and development is really critical to do that. Now, you can be a technical leader, which is a pioneer of certain innovations. So some companies like Apple may pioneer certain innovations. There are some chip makers that pioneer processors and speed of processors, and they are like Intel is really driven on innovation. Their next chip has to be smarter, faster, smaller, use less electric to stay competitive. Now, if you're a technological follower, it means you imitate competitor products. So if you see a lot of other smartphones, they're imitating Apple. They're seeing what works and they're trying to copy them. Some successfully, some not so successfully, like BlackBerry had a big failure trying to copy, being a technological follower of Apple. And there are things called open innovation, where groups of people or alliances or company come together, such as corporations and governments, academic research labs, and consumers, and they help develop new innovations, new products by working together. Because sometimes a company can't do it by itself. They do, and there are many innovations that were funded by the government, specifically NASA. Two big things from the space agency was that you may use every day today is Velcro and Tempur-Pedic style foam beds and mattresses and pillows. The space program developed a lot of innovations that were necessary to go to the moon and do certain space missions, and those were including in the minimization, can't say that word, sorry. The minimizing of computer chips and components is what gives us such small computers today, because when they needed to do manned missions, especially to the moon, the computers had to be much smaller, because it was just weight and space was a priority as far as the cost of getting them to leave orbit. So they spent a lot of time on miniaturization, there we go, of these products. And that really led to the smaller computers we had today. So this open innovation between many researchers helps to foster innovation and end up into new products. Okay, let's talk about operations strategy. Now, here is a strategy where operations is really the running of the company. How the products are produced and manufactured, vertical integration between raw materials to manufacturer to retailer, the production process of making the products, the physical logistics of moving the products around and in relationships with suppliers. So that's all operational strategy. Now, in operational strategy, it's really important for the companies to have a good idea of how the company is working. And the bigger the company, the bigger the operations, the more chance they have to improve their operational strategy. So if you take a company like Walmart that made a really impressive operational strategy on their distribution and order fulfillment of their supercenters, which made them give them the ability to have less in stock at Walmart, but quickly replenish once the items are sold, helped to greatly reduce Walmart's overall world inventory. And even the another company has excellent operational strategies is Amazon, with their distribution centers, the way that they stock and place their goods around the world. They even have a system where they're going to guess what you're going to buy and stock it close to you, so they can get, they're getting so good at Amazon that they're actually offering same day delivery of certain items in certain markets. So it's all about, how they organize the factory, organize the production floor, organize the distribution, organize the inventory. So a good operational strategy really does look at inventory very closely. How much inventory do we need to have on hand? The lead times, sometimes it can take up to 6 months to make a product. So if you stock out of that product and you don't have enough, if it sells suddenly very quickly, you don't realize it, and you don't start making new products, you can be out of stock for a while, and a competitor can take advantage of that. So it's important to really have good control over your inventory and have it where it's needed when customers are looking to buy it. And even a big pioneer of operation strategies has always been the auto industry. They're the ones that really pioneered the assembly line, and much later they pioneered the just-in-time, where inventory hits the factory just in time for when it's needed. And one way they accomplished that is they had an operational strategy of encouraging their suppliers to put a location or a warehouse very close to their factories. So that way, when the factory opened up in the morning, everything could be delivered that needed to be manufactured that day, which greatly helped them to reduce the inventory they had on hand, which frees up a lot of cash, helps them reduce the amount of storage and warehouses they need to hold this stuff. So it's, a smart operational setup can lead to lower costs and more efficient manufacturing and distribution of goods. So it's a key area to have focused strategy on. And then there's a purchasing strategy. Excuse me. So here we're looking at, obtaining raw materials, supplies, anything the company needs to purchase. And the idea for purchasing really is to develop a relationship where you have a steady flow of the materials you need to purchase, so they're available when you need to buy them. But also the idea of purchasing at the lowest cost to get. And the idea is you want to have the best quality at the lowest price. So you don't want to go at a low price where you're going to be worse quality, which some companies actually choose to do if the price is that good. But you want to really look at your sourcing of materials. In some cases, you want to have multiple sources, so you don't really rely on one company too strongly. And there may also be an analysis. A lot of times they have to make analysis. Things are sold at discounts. So buy 100 kilograms, get a 10% discount. 500 kilograms, 15% discount. 1,000 kilograms, and you get a 20% discount. But the 20% discount may be tempting, but do you need that much? Is it going to be, remember, that just like if I offered you a 20% discount on a year's supply of cereal, so you buy a year's supply of cereal, and we'll say that's 52 boxes, we'll give you a 20% discount. However, you have to also remember that if you have a year's supply of cereal, where are you going to store that? Do you have to buy a bigger house with a bigger kitchen to store that? That's a big expense. And what about the expiration? Will the cereal last a whole year? Could there be damage or loss or spoilage of the cereal due to other factors during the year? So these are all things that purchasing has to think about. What's the best way to purchase something at the lowest cost? And sometimes it's purchasing in bulk, and that's why that's the whole idea against, for a consumer level, like a Costco. But a lot of times you find yourself going to Costco, spending $300 on these bulk items that you may never finish, especially if, you're a small family. So the actual purchasing strategy is really critical to helping maintain costs and increase supply of everything a company would need to buy. And you want to develop a strategy where you have access to your goods and that the suppliers don't have any leverage over you. So you usually want to have multiple suppliers to prevent them from raising the price on you and not being able to have someone else to turn to. So in that, we'll call that multiple sourcing, where you can order a particular part from several vendors. So if you're a car company, and you want someone to build a dashboard for you. So instead of relying on one company, you may have 2 or 3 companies that are going to do this for you, just in case one company goes bankrupt or tries to leverage more money out of you. The sole sourcing would rely on one particular supplier, and this could be a good strategy if you come to terms with one supplier and say, listen, we'll buy everything from you if you promise us this price. And that's something that Walmart sometimes does. They'll use their leverage of a really big retailer to go to one supplier and say, we'll give you all this business if you can send it to us at this price. And then there's parallel sourcing, where two suppliers are the sole suppliers of two different parts, but they're also backup suppliers for each other. So they're sort of they work in tandem to relieve the worry of what happens if there's an earthquake at one of my suppliers at one location and I want to back up. And this is a way of solving that problem but limiting the amount of suppliers that a company may utilize. Sometimes the more suppliers, the more effort it is to put together. Now, logistics is related to operations, but logistics is more about the traveling and the flow of the manufacturing process. So looking at anything that's moving in your company, the products between the product lines, but shipping, some products have really confusing logistics. The product might be developed and designed in the United States, manufactured in China, shipped and assembled in Europe, and then sold in Central America. I mean, these are just logistics of certain things, the global manufacturing and outsourcing that demand a high level of specialization in logistics management and logistics strategy. So you could have more of a centralized logistics where things are done in-house at one company location. You can outsource a lot of the production as part of your logistics and work with suppliers and manufacturers in different parts of the world. And also utilize the internet is a big trend in logistics of tracking and managing products. And a big one innovation in this logistical area that came up at one point in the past was using the internet to track packages. So you may have done this was first done for businesses and later from individuals, but you may have done this, you order something from Amazon and you want to track your packages. Has it been packaged? Has it been shipped? Is it in transit? Has it been delivered? So these are all different innovations and strategies in logistics to help keep customers, suppliers, and manufacturers better communicated and better connected and informed, so you know what's happening. Okay. Look at HRM is human resource management, and this is the idea of companies dealing with their labor or employees. And there's a lot of different strategies to utilize on how you're going to manage your employees. Are you going to hire people at a lower wage and train them in-house to develop skills? Or are you going to hire people with the skills and pay them a higher wage? Are you going to look at, what's the best way to motivate these people and keep them happy in the workforce? And what's the best way to review them and give them bonuses and raises? So a company has to have a strategy of how they're going to manage and a diverse workforce and how they're going to maintain a competitive advantage with the people they have in their company. Because a company is only as good as their people. So if they have the best people possible, or they hire great people and they have great training and they have a particular strategy for how these employees are going to work and fit within the company, it helps the company to become more successful. So, if you look at the fast food industry strategy where, they perform relatively low-skilled jobs, they look to pay the fast food workers a very low wage. Now, the one problem with this is that they've gotten so good at training low-wage workers to work in fast food restaurants. There's now a movement for many cities and states to actually raise the minimum wage make a law to raise the minimum wage of fast food workers because their wages are so poor, they live below the poverty line, and they actually are generally more likely to be on state or federal support services. So the mayor of New York actually was saying that we're tired of being in business of supporting paying for fast food workers, because New York was looking at the amount of food stamps and welfare and additional support that they give to people who are actually working. So they're working at the fast food restaurants, but making such a low wage that the state has to step in and give them assistance to keep them out of the poverty line, or just enough to survive. So the idea was, if we force a higher wage for fast food workers, then New York State would not have to give so many benefits and subsidize these people. So it's really so the companies may have to rethink if fast food companies have to pay higher wages, and that means either they have to raise the prices, accept lower profits, or redesign the processes at these fast food companies to reduce the use of labor. Because in the past, the labor's been so cheap, they've really never focused too much on reducing the amount of actual physical labor at these fast food restaurants, and that's why you always see a lot of people working at them. And in some businesses, you need higher skilled, higher paid personnel, and that's going to be a particular strategy of how do we obtain these people. So typically, people with high skills who can make a lot of money for a company are going to demand a higher salary and have many other opportunities outside of that. So human resource management really develop a strategy not only to hire, but also to maintain and retain employees. How do you keep an employee once you've hired them? And that's all about company morale and satisfaction of the job. And they found that a good human resource strategy is one where you keep employees happy and feeling a sense of accomplishment. So having a system for promotion is important. Having a system for gaining more skills or additional training is important. So not only do employees want to be well paid, they also want to be they also want to feel like they're getting momentum and moving forward in their career by getting promotions or learning additional skills and moving up in the company. And human resources needs to facilitate that. Now, technology or IT is a department, and they're looking for managing or having a strategy that's going to make the company utilize the information technology as best as possible. And information technology is critical to all the systems inside of a company. So you have to have a strategy. And a lot of companies follow information strategy where they look for one program to run the whole company, like Oracle or SAP or PeopleSoft, which is these giant programs that run the entire company. So this is a way of making companies more. Hopefully, the software will make the companies more efficient, more information more readily available, analysis more easily, and IT really has to keep the company connected. So when they say sort of the follow the sun, there's a 24-hour connectability or operation of a company that the IT needs to keep together through the internet and through various programs and communications. The IT is critical for any company to have a strong strategy to keep the company moving forward. All right. The sourcing decision, as far as other functions, outsourcing strategy. Now, outsourcing is basically there's a process or something that is expensive for the company to do, and you can hire another company to do it. So you can outsource your human resources, your IT department. You can outsource your manufacturing. Just about any element of a company can be outsourced to somebody else to do. A famous area is customer service. A lot of companies will hire customer service companies in other countries, which will do all the customer service for them, so they don't have to worry about staffing, training, and dealing with customer service, which can be a very time and money expensive process. So outsourcing could be a way of breaking out pieces of your company that you find a little too challenging or a little too expensive to manage and handing it to an expert company that's going to take over for you. Now, offshoring is is different. It's similar but different. Offshoring is really buying up, a whole nother wholly owned company, a company that you own, and it's in another country, and you're just putting an activity or function at this other company you own at another location in another country. So you're offshoring. So a lot of offshoring is usually manufacturing. So you're a manufacturer of microwaves. You say, okay, it's getting too expensive to manufacture these microwaves in the U.S. with the salaries here. So we're going to make a division, make a manufacturing company in Vietnam, and we're going to have the Vietnamese manufacture these microwaves at hopefully a much lower cost. Okay, so there's some disadvantages of outsourcing. One, customers complain, and if you've ever have to dealt with customer service that's outsourced to a company that doesn't do it very well and has a poor training, or we've all had these customer service complaints where we're trying to deal with somebody and they have a hard time understanding us, or they don't really know the company, or they don't seem like they can fix their problems very easily. So customers sometimes, if outsource is done poorly for customer service, customers complain. You can be locked into long-term contracts. So some outsourcers will say, yeah, if you want us to do this function for you, you have to guarantee us a 10-year contract, which means if there's a change of plans or change of strategy, you're still obligated to fulfill parts of that contract. Now, if you have somebody else doing a process for you like manufacturing, you're going to now lose the ability to get new core competencies in this area, or learn new skills, or really manipulate the manufacturing too closely because somebody else is doing it. And outsourcing is expensive. There could be savings in the beginning when you outsource, but typically outsourcing, just like if you were to hire someone to mow your lawn, to clean your house, to repair your car, change your oil, that's going to be more expensive. But hopefully the expertise and the abilities that they have to perform the job, which would be a higher, more successful level than you, will help cover those costs. And sometimes poor product quality. So you could have someone clean your house, but they don't do as good a job as you would do. A lot of companies will have somebody manufacture their product for them, but they'll find that they don't do as good a job as they promised or as the company would really like, and they have less control over it. So sometimes when they don't know until the product comes in after it's been manufactured. Now, some things to avoid in outsourcing, or common errors in outsourcing to avoid, is outsourcing the wrong activities. Probably a bad idea to outsource human resource management. A lot of sensitive information there. A lot of daily contact is needed. Selecting the wrong vendor, not doing your due diligence, and picking somebody maybe for a low cost, but it might be a vendor that really can't fit your needs properly. Developing poor contracts with these outside outsourcers, not really having a good contract to protect yourself as a company in case something goes wrong. So these contracts need to cover a lot of contingencies. Lack of control is definitely a big item, where if you're making it in-house and manufacturing it in-house, or having your IT in-house, you have much more control and can get much more insight of what's happening. When someone else is doing it, not so much. And there could be hidden costs. There could be costs that develop. Maybe it's the shipping of the products. Maybe it's the time delay between when you want something changed and how soon they can change it. So these are all different hidden costs that can develop. And there could be a lack of an exit strategy. What if this company goes out of business? Or what if you need to change things? Or a company's going to be sold, you want to discontinue a product. How do you exit, and what are the costs of that? Okay, so a proposed outsourcing matrix is you could look at different things, the potential for competitive advantage, high or low, and the total value added to the firm's products and services, high or low. So if you have if you have a low potential for competitive advantage, and then you have a high value added, then you want to completely outsource. On the other side of the spectrum, if you have a low value added to the company, meaning that it's not going to really add much value to the company, and there's a high tendency of developing a competitive advantage, you may want to have a tapered vertical integration and produce some internally. So this is really just looking at these two competing ideas of a potential for competitive advantage and the total value added to the firm's products and services. So in some cases you want to outsource completely. In some cases, if you have a high value added to the firm and a high competitive advantage, you want to be fully integrated, meaning no outsourcing. So this is just a quick little matrix to kind of get the idea of some things that are more valuable to the company or the company can do better, they should retain, and things that have less value or less important to the company's competitive position, they should outsource. Okay. Strategies to avoid as far as in these areas is follow the leader. So imitating other competitors is never a good idea. You want to, if you ignore your particular competitive advantages and focus on what the competition is doing and follow them too closely, you may be limiting your company from their potential. Hit another home run. This is a company that's so focused on pioneering a new successful product that they may miss the opportunities that their past successful products have. So if you're focusing too much on and too many resources on making the next home run, you may be missing out on the expansion development of your last current product in brand extension and in different developments, or just competing in other products that are not necessarily a pioneering innovation home run, but just another very solid, very usable business area. Arms race, which is really when two companies are increasing the market share and trying to increase their sales revenue, but in a way where they're both losing money. So they're over advertising, they're promoting too heavily, they're spending too much on research and development, that they're just draining all the profits out of the industry. And this is often, we see this a lot in the airline industry and even in the semiconductor industry where the companies battle so closely. The do everything mistake. So sometimes, companies can't do everything at all times the best way possible. So you may not have enough resources to do everything. So you want to focus on what you can do best or what you have a competitive advantage on, to really focus on that, and to have other people or other companies help you do the rest. There's also this idea of a losing hand. So a corporation might have invested so much in particular strategy that the top management is unwilling to accept its failure and keeps pushing money into it and keeps trying to make it work. So they may feel that, I've just spent too much time and too much money to really quit this particular field, And so, so there's some times where, a company, you may look at, some companies like Kodak was just putting so much money in film and not really focusing on other opportunities in digital areas, that they just, kept funding losing projects. And sometimes you really have to say, okay, that enough is enough, just accept the loss and move on and admit you made a mistake. Corporate scenarios. This is something where companies want to look at their strategies and see guess how they're going to play out in the future. So pro forma, or an estimated future, is what pro forma stands for. And this is where companies are going to look at the projected sales and try to develop a balance sheet income statement to forecast the effects of different strategies. So what if we lower price and increase market share? Well, they'll say we'll make a pro forma financial statement, income statement based on that idea. Or what if we focus on prestige products, selling less but at a higher price? Or what if we buy another company? Well, how our financial statements change if we do that? So these pro forma ideas is really just playing out corporate scenarios, but putting them in the number terms, and developing financial statements is really see how they're going to play out. So some corporate scenario steps. 1, an industry scenario, making assumptions about a particular environment or task environment. 2, developing a common size financial statements from prior years. And 3, constructing detailed pro forma financial statements for each strategic alternative. So we're really kind of put together a financial statement, a template or design that's been used in prior years. And then when you have different strategies, trying to estimate, it's really about the sales and profit estimates that you're going to use to conduct these analysis. So here's a scenario chart where we can put in different items on the scenario chart to sort of make these projections. So these projections are going to be utilized for the company to say, okay, based on our projections, the financials work out. This is a good strategy. So if things work out, like if we sell everything we expect to sell at this particular price, we're going to make even more profits. And that would be, sort of like you have the idea of what you want to do as a strategy, but you really have to work out the math on the financial statements to see if it's going to maximize shareholders' wealth. And this scenario box system is just a way of helping to generate those pro forma financial statements and looking at. Most companies have a spreadsheet where the spreadsheet's already all set up, and they just put in a couple key indicators such as price and products or new products, and that will automatically generate the financial statement. So they can quite easily put in a bunch of scenarios into this pro forma financial statement in Excel, change a couple of variables, and see how that plays out in the net line or total profits of a company. Now, companies also have to look at managing risk and thinking about risk. So none of these scenarios are 100% guaranteed. There could be changes in the environment, in the economy, in competition that's going to change the outcome of these scenarios. So risk is always something that companies should look to factor into their pro forma financial statements, because strategies that they're employing or concepts that they're going to put in place and the forecast they're going to make based on these may not actually develop and be true. So that's always a risk that you have to take. Sorry, phone call. Let me just shut off the ringer on that. Sorry. So let's look at the management's attitude towards risk. Two concepts here can be a real options approach, where you outline multiple options. You see that the future is uncertain, so you sort of develop multiple options or multiple paths that could occur. So sort of a scenario-based risk management tool, and also net present value. So net present value, risk could be associated in the cost of money. So if there's a certain cost of money, you want to use that as a discount rate to project your future cash flow payouts and bring them all to today's into today's dollars, because future money is less valuable than present money. So we're going to look at the project and see how much cash flow is this going to generate every year for the next 10 years, and we're going to adjust that cash flow for the risk of, usually the risk is involved in the cost of the money for borrowing to set up this project, and subtracting that from the amount invested. So if we invest $100,000 to get this project to go, and it's going to make $20,000 a year for the next 10 years, but so we look at it simply, it's a $100,000 cost, but $200,000 of profits, but not really $200,000 of profits because you're getting them over 20 years. If you discount that to today's value, it may be $160,000 in today's money if you take away the cost of the money. So the net present value is it is more of a financial tool to assess risk, and it's something that you would learn in more detail in a financial management course or a corporate finance class. Okay, stakeholders priority matrix. This is something that we're going to look at as far as the interest in corporate activities and the power of the stakeholders. So this bottom line denotes power here. So you just can't see it on the slide. So if governments have a lot of power, creditors have a lot of legal powers. Shareholders and customers have a relatively high amount of power because shareholders own the company and they can vote on changes, and customers really decide whether or not the company lives or dies. And then lower power could be associated with communities and activist groups like Greenpeace, but they have a higher, I think the creditors have the highest amount of interest in corporate activities because they're looking at the company to pay them back. So they're going to have a high amount of control, so they can dictate policies to companies. Like, if you're going to borrow money from us, you can do this, you can't do that sort of requirements. And they're also very closely monitoring the company's business, where other parties like Greenpeace really have very little legal power over the company and very little influence on corporate activities. Where the government may have a high amount of power, but a lower amount influence or interest in actual corporate activities, but more about what the company can or can't do. Now, so stakeholders may have concerns. If you're going to do something, a different strategy, or looking to change the company in some way, so stakeholders are going to know how this is going to affect me. What am I likely to? How am I likely to benefit from these new alternatives? Will this affect what I want to get from the company? And what is the probability of the company is going to do this? So any stakeholder in a company, and these are the basic stakeholders here: shareholders, customers, creditors, government, local communities. They sometimes get nervous when companies change their strategy or go into a different market or buy into a different business or change their product, and they really want to understand what's happening. At one point, Coca-Cola took a really big risk and changed their formation and taste of Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola has a very distinctive taste, but in the 80s, they found that they were losing market share to Pepsi, so they redesigned Coca-Cola to taste more like Pepsi and called it New Coke. Well, stakeholders were furious, and customers, one of the stakeholders, totally rejected it, to the point where they had to backtrack, apologize, and make a product called Classic Coke. So they had New Coke and Classic Coke for a while until they quietly phased out New Coke, and they just had Classic Coke, which then reverted back to being Coke. So you could see how, if companies are going to make big decisions, stakeholders should really be, their questions should be answered and their fears should be alleviated. Otherwise, they may put pressure on the company. Political strategy, this hopefully brings the stakeholders into agreement on the corporate action. So the corporate needs to be a little political savvy, try to build communications and committees and advertise and communicate to these different stakeholders, even lobbying government, working with labor unions to really get these ideas across about what they're doing and how they're going to benefit. So sometimes it's a political campaign for a company to make a big change and to bring everybody on board. And say an auto manufacturer wants to outsource and close a plant in the United States and outsource to another country. There's going to have to be a certain amount of political strategy to get that done smoothly and to have the stakeholders okay with it. Okay. Now, corporate culture is something that a company develops, just like a family has their own culture and traditions or routines. A company can have their own culture. So a company has to, decide upon, if they're making big changes or changes in strategy, company culture can be affected. So they can ignore the culture, or they can try to manage the culture around the change or implementation plan. So say a company is going to put in a new computer system, a new, say, SAP to run and the entire company. That's going to, change the culture of how people are used to managing their information and the programs they work with. So a company may have a collection of 20 different programs they work with, now going to be all replaced with one program. That's a big change to the culture. An implementation plan has to be developed to make a smooth implementation from the current system into the new program. So, and sometimes you have to change the culture to fit the strategy. So if people are actively working against what the company wants or what the company's trying to implement, sometimes messages have to be sent out to change the culture. Sometimes education is used and training, and sometimes it's a message like, okay, listen, these people are being fired because they're not on board with what we're trying to do. So either make a choice, either be on board and help support where we're going, or leave. It could be as stern as that. But it's difficult to change, the culture of a company. So sometimes companies may want to adjust their strategy to fit the culture a little bit more. Okay, so strategic choice, evaluating these alternative strategies and selecting what's the best alternative for your company strategy. So decision makers, they're going to be held accountable for a lot of the failures. So they need to take a really close look of their actions and the different situations they're going to get into by choosing a different path or a new strategy. And they really need to have look at different alternatives closely so they could say that, okay, these are three things that we can do. We're doing A because B has these issues and plan C has these costs. They really need to show that they had done the diligence in their strategic choices and come up with real good reasons for why or why not they're going to move into certain strategic choose certain strategic choices. Now, you want to avoid what's called a consensus trap. So one way is to play the role of devil's advocate. Think of and identify potential problems or complaints that this strategy may have. So, a devil's advocate is someone who's going to step back and say, okay, I'm for the strategy, but these are things I think that could come up that could be an issue. And you sort of try to role play out all the potential problems or pitfalls a certain strategy may have, so that you can come up with rationale for why you're doing this or solutions to avoid those pitfalls. And it's, you want to look at the duality of any type of strategic decision. There could be, different proposals that, would generate different results. But the more the company looks at all the potential problems and potential strategies and puts together a really tight rationale of why you're going with this particular course of action and why these other courses of actions are not going to be the best solution, or figuring out potential problems within a course of action that can be avoided or changed, is going to make a strategic plan much more successful. So if you're looking at evaluating alternatives, you have to think of this idea of mutually exclusive or independent. So independent projects, you can do as many independent projects as you want, but mutually exclusive ideas is that you could do one or the other. So for example, you could build a tunnel or bridge, but you're not going to do both. So it's a solution that, you may have alternatives, but you can't do both of them. And that is mutually exclusive. And that's sort of a common idea. Successful, it must be feasible and have a good probability of success, your choice. Completeness, must take into account all the strategic issues, and internal consistency. It must make sense for the entire firm, and it must not contradict with any type of goals or policies or strategic strategies in place currently. All right. So developing policies. So for a company, if you're going to have strategic changes or big changes in the company and the strategic formulation, you must draft hopefully a communicating and effective policy that is going to look at the competing sources, demands, test their strategic soundness, and set clear boundaries for how employees operate and how the company is going to operate, and grant certain freedoms for experiment on those constraints. So a policy is really a document that the company can put together to really communicate to their employees, shareholders, stakeholders, what they're trying to do, what is okay to do, what's not okay to do, and pre-think all the questions that companies or consumers or stakeholders may have, and incorporate them into your policy. It is our policy to do this. It's not our policy to do that. So for a phone company, it is our policy to collect phone data, but it's not our policy to give it over to governments. So they need to make these boundaries and set a clear, concise methodology of how they're going to do things and what the official policy of the company is. So employees know what they can and can't do, and customers and stakeholders know what the company will or will not do, and that's what the policy is really in place to do. Okay, so that is it for functional strategy and strategic choice for Chapter 8. Thank you for joining me for this chapter, and look forward to, we're moving to the next strategy section, implementation and control, and we're going to move into Chapter 9, strategy, implementation, and organization for action. So look forward to that. Okay, thank you and take care.